I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. We have yet another perfect pod steamrolling in your direction. Andrew Kuo, how are you on this balmy June day? Vibe check only.
I'm doing incredible, man. It's never better. I'm doing incredible, man. Never better. Wait, it's as if I said that again. Sorry, my memory is really lacking these days.
Oh, yeah. You've got that goldfish syndrome that seems to be infecting everyone in Lower Manhattan.
I'm not
Things
sending
are
you the same.
occurring, and everyone's just forgetting that it already happened in the past.
I'm not sending you like the same texts every night. Like, let's go to the wine bar. Let's go to the wine bar. You were like, you just sent me that text last night.
You just sent me that exact same text about grabbing and wine 2 days ago, and then you sent it again yesterday.
And Wine was a really influential basketball mixtape series, if you don't remember. You had Skip to My Lou and others.
I'm just imagining people like pouring into a nice glass, and then
Buckets.
quickly dribbling it between their legs.
Bouncing it off the bartender's forehead.
Hit him with that Merlot.
Yeah. Yeah, man. What's the vibe check?
And wine mixtape. Sorry. Well, I got an article. You know, there's been a lot of talk about Dime Square,
Wow.
Lower Manhattan, Canal,
Also known as Ladiv Square. Also known as Times
Belldell,
Square.
Belldell.
Belldell. South.
Let me read you a little something from the Paper of Record. Paper Record. Chinatown is not a mystery anymore. People used to know us for the food and shopping. Now it's a hip place to be. But while visitors may be charmed by the neighborhood's ethnic flavor, some residents say the area's newfound popularity may threaten that atmosphere. This is from the New York Times.
Woo.
Christopher, not Quo, but Quai, K-U-I? Interesting.
Okay.
Executive Director of Asian Americans for Equality, a local social service agency, said Chinatown is becoming just another tourist shell or a haven for luxury condominiums. We don't want Chinatown just to be a hip place for people to hang out. The clubs are a symptom of the gentrification trend, which endangers the local economy.
Wow.
They are worried about changing Dime Square. Is Dime Square dead? This was written November 19th, the year 2000. Ta-da! Wow. Shout out to Denny Lee, who is my editor at the New York Times for a long time. Neighborhood Report, Chinatown, not your father's Chinatown, at hip new bars and clubs. Again.
Y2K hits, man.
We survived the millennium bug,
Right,
and now
right.
this.
Robots.
22 years ago. 22 years ago.
So the robots did or did not take over, and Chinatown is going to be a haven for bonobos. Check and check. And check.
Listeners, I got some news for you. I've been inside the Death Star.
Wow.
That's
All
right. The new hotel. A decade and a half in the making. Looming on the corner of Canal and Allen. I've been inside into the, not innermost sanctums, but a sanctum.
Is it Six Orchard? Is that what it's called?
I think so. But I've been in a sanctum. And let me tell you, seems fine. It looks like a McNally style old-timey bar. So I guess there is a tasting menu restaurant that is not completed yet. There is a tavern, they're calling it, which is on the corner there of Allen and Canal. And then there's a rooftop that I have not been on. So I've been in one of these three areas. And then there's a hotel bar, too, which I believe is open.
And which
Tavern.
ones, if all of them are Ignacio from Estella's spots? Are they all his?
I think all.
Right.
The tavern absolutely is. The food is reminiscent of Altro Paradiso or Estella, those kind of things. Like here is your leeks with hazelnuts.
A little precious, super delicious.
I had the burger. I will say the structural integrity of the bottom bun dissolved a little
All right,
too
this
quickly
is a
for my
whole
taste.
other pod. Okay, why the juices from the burger or
Yes, it was a
flimsy
smashed.
bun?
It was a smashed burger.
Okay, that happens.
I thought it tasted great, but I will say it was unedible in terms of as a hand food within about 5 minutes. That's a problem. Look, just opened, needs to be addressed.
Right.
Maybe the soggy bottom issues will be resolved.
Story of my life.
Just throwing you the
Kyle Lowry.
throwing you the alley-oop. I've got a soggy bottom joke for you, Quo.
Take that, Pat Riley. It's the last time you kink shame.
There's a whirlwinding. That's that and wine mentality. But yeah, it had the same aesthetics as McNally's spot over there was like Cherche de Midi or
Right.
kind of the Dutch, the Dutch as we always discuss on this pod, or like Bowery Hotel. Those
Christmas,
kind of vibes.
man. Just say it. It's Christmas.
It was
Jingle bells.
Christmassy, Italian-y, old-timey, New Yorky. It's a beautiful room. It's got the tiling that you would expect. It looks great.
Sure.
Saw some familiar faces in there from the art world. Nate Freeman, friend of the pod.
Nice.
Chloe Wise, some other people there. So already seems to be populated by the creme de la creme.
Is this
of Del Bell.
was this an
Del?
opening or was it just free range, open for business kind of thing?
I'm pretending that I got some exclusive invite. You can just walk in. It's open.
Fair enough. I mean, between Baccarat, the wine bar, low wine bar, and now this, it's hard to just stick to and wine. You're gonna have to cross over, maybe do a little Euro step towards the second or third place.
And then spin move your way over to the place that's opening where Beast used to be and where Mission Chinese used to be. There's a bar.
Is there
or
a new
restaurant
spot in
opening
that
there
space?
Too. There's gonna be.
Right. I asked someone today or yesterday if all these things opening up in Dime Square, like, why do I care about Bonobros taking over yet another little grid, little pocket of a neighborhood that I used to enjoy? Doesn't matter. Am I being a jerk? Or is this just like everything's all good and more business for everybody is a better city?
Well, I think your vested interest is that you live somewhat nearby and you can walk over to a place that you like versus not being able to walk over to a place that you like. I mean, do you enjoy hanging on, I don't know, Orchard and Stanton?
I used to a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And what happened?
The Hat turned into La Hat. They stopped serving to-go margaritas.
Was that the downfall of the Lower East Side? Was that a crystallizing moment? Because I kind of feel like it was sort of when
The Hat?
when the Hat couldn't sell to-go margs. The game
Those were
changed.
so brutal. You would have one of those, and just like it was like this chemically. It was grain alcohol, obviously, but it was like this chemically kind of induced haze that is really hard to describe. Where you're perpetually hungry, soggy butt, all those things.
Oh, soggy bottoms
Yeah.
with the endless marg. But it was great for a summer, spring day. The marg to go and LES Classic. Then El Portal did it for a while. They kind of
That's right.
seized the to-go marg mantle.
Totally shuttered now. I think I walked by. I don't know if there's a business about to open in the El Portal space, but it's next to
Well,
Black
it
Sea.
reopened as a place that kind of resembled like a vagina inside.
Wait, what?
It was just all very pink, and it was an Instagram bait restaurant that was there for a while, like 2 years. It was super popular. That was its whole deal, that it was like Instagram bait. Wasn't that the same place?
That was El Portal, I believe. A
Yeah.
version of it. I've eaten in there when it was pink, but it had not occurred to me that it was a vagina. I thought it was a soggy bottom. If you walk down, the bottom buns had potential to be soggy. Did you have a soggy bottom burger? Or like, what are we really talking about here?
Oh man, what are we talking about here?
So are
So
you?
are you going to defend Dime Square to the death?
Yeah, sure. Let's do it. To
Yeah.
the death.
Yes.
To the
Yes.
death.
Yes. Yes. I am.
Well, like, it is really every. I'm washed, and I've seen a lot of. I've seen like 2 generations of change in New York City. Not the most, as some of my other friends who have been here since like the late '70s, hanging out, being weird, and like, I obviously I love this city more than any other place I've been to. I think all these things are great. There is more of everything that I've loved about this place than ever. Music, art, places to eat, interesting people. But it's hard for like, by nature I think weirdos aren't like necessarily wealthy. Some are, obviously. And it's hard to like identify a neighborhood where it is affordable for people to try to make new things before it gets discovered. Like this happens at every 5 years. There's another place, Soho, West Village, Tribeca. It goes quickly, but it is going quicker than normal or usual because of, in my opinion, just like the internet, right? These things are really easy to find out. There's no gatekeeping anymore.
Yeah, but it's also funny because the Wednesday nights at pianos are where like tons of young people are going and listening to music, and from what I've seen, they have like really good booking. They're getting interesting, DJs or bands or rappers or whatever. And like we of course remember the first incarnation of pianos before it blew up with popularity, when it was just the same thing as that. It was a music venue, and we knew people who managed the place and ran the bar in there, and it was just a place to go get like a burger that didn't have necessarily a soggy bottom.
It did not have a soggy bottom, famously. Yeah, I used to DJ upstairs there. They used to play video games on a big screen. It used to be great. Like, people involved were like from Swim back in the day that also threw great parties down near Dime Square.
Wait, I've talked about DJing at Swim on this pod, right?
Yes, the booth that you climb up in.
Yes, and then I climbed up there with a broken leg.
That's right.
That
Yeah,
sucked.
and the manager of pianos is still like a member of this noise band called Electroputas, and he's great. Joe is the man. He knows everything, right? And like, I remember going there after a while and be like, "Oh, it's really crowded tonight." He's like, he's the one who he's the one who told me once, and I never forgot. Like, he used to do the door there when it was hectic, and if he didn't want to let someone in, he was just like, "Listen, man, this is like a downtown club. You can't be wearing like these clothes here. Like you're dressed up going to Uptown, Midtown, whatever. You're not coming in here." And if they were dressed the opposite, he'd be like, "Yo, listen, this is a fancy place. You can't come in here with a baseball hat and a t-shirt." So it was just like, it was really easy to kind of thwart people. But after a while, I think they just gave up, and it turned into somewhere that was for a different demographic. But it's encouraging to hear it's coming back. I don't know, is it? I'm being a snob here, but like, things always kind of shift, and I think the people with tons of money who aren't like us maybe stop going to pianos as much. So it's like neighborhoods. Tribeca now has all these galleries because no one wanted to be in there.
What I also find funny as a nod to piano's evolution is that the cool kid parties listed as 158 Ludlow.
Oh, that's funny. It's like, well, it's in the back room of pianos. You mean like the literal back room where the stage is?
So you're saying it's at pianos? No. It's at 158 Ludlow. It's near pianos. It's really close to pianos. As in, like, you go in pianos, you're inside pianos, but it's a different party.
Listen, the meetup is at the hotel on Eldridge, but it's going to be like in a table in the back of the bar. It's not at the actual hotel. It's in a secret part of the hotel, which is the back table of the bar.
No, it's at a Christmas restaurant in Ladiv Square.
Right.
It's open air, though, so you're not technically really inside. You're just standing on the interior of a wall.
Yeah.
Technically.
So what kind of parties are going on at this new pianos number 2? More pianos.
Pianos too. That's a lot of music that I am not particularly familiar with. Here's a list from the other night: Top Gun, Jade, Robot Moon Juice, Nick Haddad, DJ Thank You, True Whitaker. Yeah,
I have not heard of any of these. I don't know, but
it's for the youth.
Yeah. I got tricked into thinking like there was a flyer one of my friends sent out, and it was like all these cool names like Y3K and all these things. And I'm like, ooh, who are these new DJs? I want to check this out. And it turns out it's like all my aughts friends. Respect to my aughts friends who are like in bands then, to just like renaming themselves. I'm like, cool, let's do it. But they're not the youth, particularly.
By the way, speaking of aught bands, have we plugged Jordan Rodelli's Lost album on this pod?
No, but you can go ahead.
So, our guy Jordan, on vacation currently, but back when he was not on vacation,
Hot dog legs.
many years ago, he was in a band called Coconuts, and a Lost album from Coconuts has just been released. I'm not sure if it's available on vinyl or CD or where you can get it, but like, let's see. I'm trying to find Here's a little review off of Bandcamp. I was in no way expecting this follow-up, and my joy is limitless. This will be searing out of my record player for a long damn time. Anyway, you can buy the vinyl for like $19, digital album for $6. Coconuts. Go get it.
Have you been, shout out to Coconuts, formerly Bogan Dust.
Formerly Bird Blobs.
That's right. Currently Hot Dog Legs. Have you been catching wind of people trying to defend Kendrick Lamar's record for not selling well? It's like a weird debate going on Twitter. Apparently, the whole industry is kind of, I think Billboard reconfigured the way they accrue like information, and all sales apparently haven't been as robust as maybe we thought they were, and Kendrick's record is a big kind of departure from his usual sales numbers, and everyone's blaming the industry, everyone's blaming like all these things, and I'm like, while that may be true, the interesting thing was listening to religious Kendrick listeners, like religious fans of teams in the NBA, trying to like take their way out of it, trying to spin it to be like, well, it's actually big. You try to sell 300,000 records, and like, I don't know. Shout out to musicians who are trying to make this happen still, man.
It's a weird like parasocial relationship there to defend someone's record sales. Like, who cares?
Well,
I just mean, if you like the record and you enjoy it, okay, maybe it wasn't for everyone, maybe it wasn't promoted well, but like, what's the difference?
but I say this in terms of religion because, like, obviously, a Warriors fan can roll up to me, a Knicks fan who doesn't even have a team in the NBA, and be like, yeah, we got a bunch of championships. What do you guys got? And I'm like, well, it's the friends we made along the way. And that kind of holds up for a second, but like they still got those rings,
I mean, fair point. But I guess my larger question here is this a three-headed rivalry here? Is this Drake, Kendrick, and J. Cole? Is that what how the alliances break down? Where it's like, okay, you're a Kendrick guy, so you're basically saying he's better and he sells more than Drake or J. Cole. Is that the rivalry?
Maybe. I mean,
it feels particular. It doesn't feel like, well, I'm a little baby guy, so like I'm mocking Kendrick's sales. Those don't seem to jibe. It feels Drake, J. Cole, Kendrick.
Maybe so, but like, where does the YSL crew come in? Like, you're not talking about like people who are into Thug or Gucci. You're like music.
No, people who listen to those artists are much cooler.
Oh, thank God.
Exactly.
Close one, man. Soggy bottoms and all. But I think you may be right. Like, it's tough because Drake just demolishes those two, right? Like, you have one who is clearly on a tier above.
Sounds like
the
we've
other two.
got a Drake guy on our.
I mean, if I had to choose
Wow.
between the three, I don't even know what J. Cole is. You're gonna have to Wikipedia that for me. Kendrick isn't funny, and Drake is a hit maker, man.
I will never shy away from discussing our apathy towards J. Cole. That's the Cookies Hoops guarantee.
Right. We're trying to make a perfect pod over here.
I, I would not recognize him. Maybe I would recognize him. Maybe I'd recognize him. I would recognize him. Yeah, I would recognize him.
For like
But if he
celebrity
was-
all-star game stuff. Yeah, we know.
If I was blindfolded and he came in and rapped like a really cool version of like Happy Birthday, Ben, I wouldn't know who was doing it.
Right. I mean, you would know Kendrick right away. Kendrick drops on a song as a guest, and immediately he's recognizable, right?
Kendrick and Drake, yes. J. Cole, I would not have a clue. I just don't know what his voice sounds like.
Remember that Drake Lil Wayne tape? It kind of sounded like indecipherable. Like it was one or the other. And I was just like, yo, that's crazy. Because, like, I think Lil Wayne is criminally underrated. I think he's had a better rap career than, like, Nas, Tribe Called Quest, whatever. Whatever rapper you like, I think Lil Wayne has had the better career. But that tape was wild. I was like, oh, this is going to be amazing. At the time, two of my favorite rappers. And it was just like, I couldn't tell their voices apart. I felt like a sham.
I had that trouble with the clips a lot too, I gotta say.
Yeah. Well, they're twins. They share DNA, so there's that.
That was the era when Drake and Wayne, I think especially Drake though, they used that rhetorical device where they would say the punchline and then just the word by itself, or be like, I'm just trying to come up with one. Like, I'm on a run, stockings.
right.
Those, I feel like those were just
Oh,
all
Drake
of his
was doing
songs.
that quite a bit. I mean,
right.
Wayne
Like,
could
here's
do
a
anything.
punchline and then just a word that was like the play.
Yeah. I mean, I think, Wayne can bounce around and do many things. And Drake is also known for that, but he's known as maybe like piano's number 2. More styles. Like Drake isn't an innovator. He's a collector, which also has its skill set.
So you are Team Drake. I'm
Hell.
Team J. Cole.
He can get buckets. Drake cannot get buckets, as we saw in the Kentucky warm-ups.
I feel like he's got a shooting coach. I've seen some Instagram clips
love
of Drake working on his jumper. Yeah, J. Cole played for did he play for St. John's as a walk-on or something? He
really?
could definitely play.
He tried
remember
out
him when he
for
played-
a team, right?
We played in the African League
Oh.
a couple games. He wasn't good though, but still, it's like a high. Those guys are like, that's a high tier. So respect to him as someone who can definitely hoop. Kendrick sadly comes in last in the hooping, I believe.
The best rapper, basketball player that we know of is Miles Bridges, right? Like in terms of rappers who can play ball.
Says that in the joy of basketball, so I don't see how anyone would ever have an argument otherwise.
Just joy of basketball, still more relevant than ever. Pick it up at your local bookseller.
So I mean, we can talk about Miles Bridges right now if we're talking rap, or we can wait.
Let's talk about.
So Miles Bridges, future Nick, posted something on Instagram. I think it was an Instagram story. I would just presume, but it's him holding, a cup of
Promethazine.
what appears to be lean, and also in the same hand a unsmoked joint. Then he took it down and tweeted like pink lemonade or something.
Newman's Own pink lemonades. That's what we drink.
Hey, if he wants to
Tobacco.
get really twisted, cool, I just question the. I mean, look, I don't recommend people getting addicted to lean and dying.
Yeah.
I'm not an advocate of that. I've told my story about seeing Juice World drinking lean and passing out and just how unhealthy it felt. But I'm not here to judge. I'm not here to kink shame. People want to get high, whatever. But I do question the wisdom of posting those things.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably got an album dropping soon. He doesn't want to like discourage his fans from purchasing his record on double vinyl for $20. Like, it's a sensitive fan base out there. And he's
Oh, well, if you're going to indulge in drugs, I'm just going to go and buy this Coconuts album instead, sir.
and he also happens to be good enough at basketball where he's maybe coming up on a big payday in a few weeks, in a month
So
or so.
what was, yeah, so the story about his contract extension was that he turned down, I think, $60 million over 4 years. So, which,
It was a
that's
good
lot
gamble.
of money.
He
And
had
that's
a
lot
good
of
enough
money,
season.
obviously.
Yeah.
But we're talking $15 million a year. He could be getting something closer to like 25, maybe even a max. But
He might get
we're talking about maybe another $10 million a year based on him, betting on himself, so to speak, and having an excellent year. So not great timing for this.
Yeah. He's restricted, so like the Hornets can match, but the word on the word on Orchard Street at the bar is that the Hornets probably will not overpay him over another suitor, which could be anybody with cap space. Like the Knicks could probably make cap space, although I think that would be a terrible move. Not because of the lean.
I mean, I don't want to get totally into basketball right now. We can talk more about the Knicks later. But
Yeah.
is there a world, and it's not this world, I'm just making this up. There isn't a world. Like, is there a world in which this was a negotiating ploy to try to get Charlotte to let him walk instead of bringing him back? I'm going to say no, there is not a world in which that exists. But I'm glad I conjured one and created it for all of us to enjoy.
Is there a team with pink colors? That would be the Spurs, right? Is he hollering at the Heat? Well, it's kind of a purple vibe. So, like, would it be? It's like a pinkish purple.
It was pink lemonade, dude.
Newman's Own, man.
I'll give you a soggy bottom, Miles. Be careful.
Yeah, I wonder like what the internet does and doesn't do for everybody. Like, that was surely something that I found to be, to your point, this stuff should not be trifled with if you have a tendency to have an addictive personality, all this stuff. It is a drug that is heavy, but I enjoyed this stuff. I saw it and I was just like, yes, Miles Bridges go off.
Also, my takeaway is that he is a good rapper. He makes good music and he talks reckless.
His flow is good. His lyrics are, he should maybe try some basketball, maybe.
Well, flow is good. He's got that Detroit cadence.
Yeah.
We talked about it with Babytron.
Yeah.
That kind of offbeat, very wordy delivery, which sounds cool and is inventive.
But
he
raps
does that
about, like,
well.
Right.
But he raps about women and using drugs and like popping a bean.
Not interesting to me, but it's hard to be Lil Wayne or Coconut. And apparently he's living the life. So maybe he was like, to all those gatekeepers, he's like, here's me sipping some Newman's Own.
I think Miles Bridges is pretty cool. Him posting that up kind of makes me think of him as less cool. Only because I'm like, you looked at your hand, you saw like a cup of lean and a joint, and we're like, oh, that's so sick.
Yeah, but
let me show people what I'm up to, because this is really badass. I've got lean and a joint. Like, I'm crushing it right now, and the world needs to see.
Well, last night you sent me a picture of a glass of wine, and you hashtagged it mixtape. Like, well, what's up with that? Very cool, man. I don't know. So, like, I love. There's a lot of debate going on recently about like the KD up in his field, LeBron James being bored and be like, "Yo, I might go on a podcast. I'm gonna drop this on Twitter as like the finals are happening." And we're like, "Oh right, there's LeBron, there's KD. All these guys are like so bored not playing basketball."
That's true. Like, if you're a poster, you got to post. Miles is like, look, I'm a poster. Something is getting posted. Like, it may be this cool ass cup of lean and joint that's looking so badass in my hand. Like, posters got to post.
Oh, I just saw an update from Miles Bridges. He said, let me read this. It was AI generated technology where he typed in Newman's own joint and my hand, and that's what it came up with. He's an artist now. He's a painter.
Most badass things you can hold in your hand.
Chillest fucking night ever.
Yeah.
Most turned I can be. Enter.
coolest left hand possible.
Yeah, and wine mixtape. Enter.
So as an artist, you. How do you feel about artificial intelligence generated art? It's sweeping Twitter. I've seen a lot of things that are funny. I don't know if some people are saying, no, this is real art. This is great art. Some of the stuff is these mushy sort of generated images that combine a lot of ideas. I'm just going to give a couple examples. Like Osama bin Laden getting slimed. It's just like an example of one.
Like,
a lot of them have to do with Gaddafi and Epstein and bin Laden. Another one that was funny is 1950s retro ad for Osama bin Laden brand cigarettes. And it invents them, and the design is cool, and the type and the faces are often a bit distorted. But like vintage 1990s Burger King magazine ad of the stinky fish sandwich with rotten bones and trash. H.R. Geiger's bag of Doritos.
I fucking love this. I love it so much, and it's gotten better in the last few years. I remember when I saw the first versions of this, people trying to like recreate like magazine covers, and it looked like a horror show. It looked like a decaying face in Evil Dead.
Deep fried breaded Yoda.
Yeah.
I'm reading these off of just a credit off of the Twitter account of Boring as Heck. Boring _ heck, who's been putting up a whole bunch of like really funny ones. Super Robert Mitchum World Game Boy. Oh no, Super Robert Mitchum World Game Boy Advance. Sorry.
They're getting worse, man. You had me at like Gaddafi doing stuff, and now we're doing Robert Mitchum over here. Soon you're gonna be like Bob Cousy dribbling with his left hand.
Computer just melting into a burning husk of circuitry.
The evil skeleton.
We have
face of
found
JJ
we have found the limits of technology. That yawning horizon has come to an abrupt cliff. Bob Cousy dribbling with his left.
I mean, obviously, I think it's amazing. It is. I've been waiting for something like this. Personally, like I make paintings about like data-driven ideas, so like obviously this is my wheelhouse. Especially the jokes, because I'm not interested in someone rendering their vacation photos in the style of Van Gogh, even though that's something you can do. And there's a lot of examples of that kind of thing online, but a certain darkness pops up right away. Like it reminds me of, I think CRISPR, the DNA sequencing that they discovered a few years ago. Basically, you can rearrange DNA to create an outcome as a child without diabetes. And we can create a whole generation that doesn't have diabetes. At first, it's just like, let's go. If we can get rid of cancer through gene sequencing, let's go. 2 seconds later, you're like, oh, this is really dark. No one should ever do this ever. Throw away the computers. Like, we don't want someone engineering anything, right? Because there's a certain human nature aspect of it where it turns on its head too quick. And the AI technology with like frivolous art stuff is dangerous. And I'm not even talking about like deep fakes. Like our president did not say that. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about like the biases we have as like a Western society. Like it's geared toward Western ideas. So if you type in wedding, it's like a Christian wedding. If you type in Asian, a lot of pornography comes up. If you type in soggy bottom, it's you eating a burger in Times Square. So like we want nothing to do with that. We want you to eat a not soggy bottom in Times Square.
This is what I want for my future.
Oh yeah,
not eating soggy bottom burgers.
I was like, what do you want? Oh right. So this is kind of like, it falls into the line of video games. Obviously, it's this world of like savior complex, like Princess in the Castle kind of stuff, where a lot of the results that have been gathered so far have been in a certain bias of the way certain people see things. And of course this will multiply. It's probably multiplying as we speak and losing some of that point of view, but it is something that's like darker than it seems. I'm into it. I want to kind of I think about the photographers I know for decades who have been talking about the phones on our cameras, the cameras on our phones, my bad, and how it kind of demolished photography in a way that bonobos demolished pianos. But then a new kind of photography came up as photography 2, like pianos 2.
Remember filters?
Instagram's whole thing was filters, old-timey filters.
Well, I'm not on Instagram. I'm only on Hipstamatic.
Right. I got a notification from Ello the other day being like, you have a new friend on Ello. Remember, that was the social media network that had no ads, that was bare bones and modern, that was supposed to siphon all the users from Facebook. And it kind of worked.
I'm still heavily involved in Peach.
Right.
But a lot of us went down, on January 6 indictments.
So like there's going to be a flattening of a curve with this kind of technology. I think obviously the way camera phones did flatten the photography curve. But then another thing pops up, and we can write about Dime Square in the year 2000, and then every 4 years whoever is there is living their main character thing and is like, why are they so obsessed with us? Up until 2022, there's people rightfully who are sitting and eating soggy bottoms and being like, why is the media so obsessed with us? Are they going to find out about our secret?
And this is the goldfish brain.
Exactly. It just like happens over and over. And there's always going to be technology that threatens, I think, art. And we're talking about two different things when we talk about artwork and the art market. The art market is going to be fine. There's no one's going to buy one of these images for $4 million. But we're going to see probably 10 times as many of them moving forward.
I saw someone on Twitter putting up some of these AI-generated artworks. And they said, this is the first time this kind of art, this artificially generated art has spoken to me emotionally.
That's awesome.
And they mentioned, they put up two images that had really touched their soul. And they were basically like farmhouses in a blizzard done in an impressionist style.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? Your opinion here kind of doesn't matter. Like, whatever you're thinking about how art's going to go, if you were looking at a cabin in a blizzard and saying, this is making my bottom soggy, then like I'm not necessarily worried about this technology disrupting the art world in a major way, because this is already around. This is just hotel painting. This is just something that you'd see on the wall at a Comfort Inn in Bethesda, Maryland.
Right. And I think generating that, I'm interested in taking like the hand away. I think that's cool when you can't see a brush or the way someone made something. I am not like a big concept dude. I don't think a concept has to be clever like Tom Friedman. I think an artwork can have a simple idea to it. Like, it's the color red. I wanted to talk about, this color. And to your point, we, by nature, we're aggregators. So all the work you usually see has been kind of, what's the opposite of art? Naturally intelligized, like it's the opposite of artificial intelligence, and like whatever we think that is. And we aggregate everything. We aggregate our basketball takes. So like I find this interesting in that way. Is the artist the program, right? Like, is the artwork the program, and everything that comes out of it is a form of this artist's work? I mean, I'd be into that idea.
Well, in the case of these AI generated artworks, or images in general, like some of them aren't art. They're art. They're visual, but they're also just kind of visual gags. They're funny.
Like a meme is not a painting, right?
Right, and these, some of them, it's like, okay, it's Saddam Hussein Max Headroom. Like, that's funny, and it is, when you look at it, like, all right, that's art, technically speaking. But they're also generated from what other people have done in the past. It's replicating styles. It's
collage,
using...
right?
It's a collage. And that, to me, is... I'm not saying that you can't be a collagist, but it's just recreating what humans have already done. And maybe the directions can give it a new skew, but ultimately it's just regurgitating what's already been created by humans, whether it's in photos or previous artwork, or even sort of an artistic aesthetic, and mushing it together and vomiting it back out. So like, yeah, like it technically is art, but I don't find it either objectionable or even particularly creative.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if it's a tool, like a paintbrush is not an artwork, but what you do with it becomes what we can talk about. And I don't think the resulting generated image is the artwork. I think either before or after something has to be done to it to elevate that. And I'm sure there's so many examples where it's great on the internet. And, speaking of the goldfish brain thing and collage, like, God, man, I think, like, not to sound too highfalutin, but I think Robert Rauschenberg is underrated in the canon of, like, American art. And I think what he was trying to say is, like, more relevant than ever. He's just a bit painterly, and he's not cool. He was very cool. His drip was impeccable, but, like, his artwork hasn't really come back in fashion, and I don't know if it will. But what he was talking about with appropriating images and borrowing and the idea of memory and goldfish brains and soggy bottoms is what we're talking about now. And he was onto this stuff, like, almost half a century ago. This stuff is valid. I mean, we're just doing this. Everything's going at such a high rate that, like, we're bound to get some great stuff out of it.
I'm generally resistant to, like, the simulation.
No,
but there are times. No, I'm generally resistant to it. But there are times when you're like, our insistence on creating everything that we envisioned as being dystopian just kind of bends fate in that direction. Like, all right, we definitely shouldn't create deep fakes. Like, let's make them.
Yeah.
Like, what about artificial intelligence that, like, has a drone that has a taser on it? Be like, yeah, we should definitely get that. That'll take care of the school shooters. I'm like, guys. All these ideas we had that were bad, we don't necessarily need to make them. But being mildly apocalyptic, I think all of it's sort of cool too.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole CRISPR thing. I think a Chinese doctor tried to do it to disastrous results, and the whole scientific community was in an uproar. Be like, we cannot open this Pandora's box. Like, the fate of our entire humanity rests on the idea of us not doing this. And someone did it because he was curious, and he's a scientist, and we're all edgelords, right? I love the simulation theory, but, like, to your point, like, the goldfish thing versus simulation is interesting because, I see some people on my feed being like, we're in the dark days of politics. Like, we've become so tribal where the idea of policy is going to eat itself alive. And I'm like, yeah. And then I just do a little bit of thinking. I'm like, oh, our president was shot in Dallas once. And then his brother was shot dead campaigning. That seems to be the dark days of politics. And
someone shot at Reagan, paralyzed Hinckley, and now he's performing at Brooklyn Steel. So, like, anything is possible, man. You can live your best life.
I saw some Kennedy chilling in the wine bar. I know about all these Oliver Stone 3 more Oliver Stones.
I saw Sirhan at the new hotel.
Right. But I do think technology is something that has to be gatekept, like gate kept. I mean, we're seeing crypto crash, right? And like, I'm not involved in it, but I think it's a good thing. I think crypto had the right idea. Some of the wrong people are involved because it's money, and money attracts a certain type of person, in my opinion. But the idea of crypto is strong. It was a good idea, and it's having a tough time. And I think
it was all a Ponzi scheme, just like Sam Hinkie's process.
hey, someone gets rich off of the Ponzi scheme, though. So it's only Ponziing most people.
Yeah, well, seriously, why does the Ponzi scheme get such a bad reputation?
Works.
It's doing what it's supposed to do, enriching Dr. Ponzi, who comes up with it.
Yeah. A lot of the concept of a Ponzi scheme are in like shorting stocks, which happens like it's happening now 1 million times over. But
Hey, ease off on the name calling about Ponzi schemes. They work just like they are supposed to. Get in early or stop complaining.
should we start a Japanese themed bar in Times Square called the Ponzu Scheme? Shout out to Time, the new Japanese bar run by our buddy Despot in Times Square. I support that.
Everyone says the sushi is excellent. I went by there to check out the space. Looks really good. And I think people have been making jokes about this, but the actual joke that Despot came up with when they called it Time was because of Dimes and calling it Dime Square. And he was like, yeah, I think we should call this place Times Square.
Done.
So
See you
that's
in
why it's
Times
called
Square.
Time Cafe.
These like wandering like bonobos in Times Square just being like, I heard this place is the hot spot. I was like going to ESPN The Zone, Chuck E. Cheese, here we go.
All right, I'm at the M&M store. Am I close to the wine bar now?
I was Googling DJ Honda because I was trying to think about Times Square. And I was like, oh, I forgot Common was on one of his songs, but it's Common Sense. And like, I forgot there was a Common Sense and a Common back in the day. And Common had to change his name, remember?
I do remember that. I had that first album on cassette, whatever it was. Can I Borrow $1?
Yeah. Oh my God. That's right. Yeah. DJ Honda, oddly listenable. I mean, in terms of that era of music, I was going through memory lane a little bit because Honda had a store right next to Last Lap, Cookies Hoops, Classic 1 champions, and that was such an odd place. It was a wall. It was ahead of its time. You go into the Honda store. It used to be on Lafayette. I think we've talked about this. It was a wall of records, one record, his new single, whatever was out, a rack of T-shirts, if I recall, and then a bunch of people in the back smoking and like selling weed.
Jacoby responded to one of your tweets about it with my experience also, which is I went in there 7 times and never bought anything.
Yeah, it wasn't retail. It was more like a gallery, and if you knew somebody, it was like a clubhouse. But that was the era of clubhouses. All these places were just like fronts for people doing graphic design and smoking and selling weed.
The glory days. You know what? I got to say, sometimes and this is going to come off as very racist, and you're willing to take me to task, I confused DJ Crush.
Oh, totally different. Come on.
With DJ Honda. And I was thinking of a Tragedy Gaddafi song that I wanted to say DJ Honda made that I liked, but in fact that was DJ Crush, and I apologize to our listeners.
I have a theory that the legend Futura in New York City, the legendary graffiti writer, was cursed by doing all the artwork for Mowax Records. It is so identifiable that I feel like it zapped a sort of a little energy from it, maybe.
Do you think the Pen and Pixel guys are saying that?
Hell,
if we hadn't done all those albums for Big Bear.
You know, I talked to the Pen and Pixel guys recently, like a few years ago. Me and my buddy were going to do a show of theirs in New York City, and we're trying to make it kind of large scale. And we found them. They're not hard to find. And we called them up, and the dude is like, oh, I stopped doing that, man. I think it's all in my attic. You're welcome to come down here and look through it. I'm really into this. Let's do it. But like, I've moved on. I have a new company. Like, I haven't thought about that in years. I'm like, what the fuck? You should be like doing this as your life. And he's like, I live with my family, man. I don't really listen to that music. I was just hired to put diamonds on people's faces, you know? It was insane. So I wanted to price the artwork.
What a great job. And what did he say? Like,
yes.
Can you just go and buy stuff from him that's unreleased or something like that?
He was trying to work that out. This show's not going to happen, so anybody who wants to do the show can go do it. Please, we need this. But he was open to everything. He was like, yeah, I haven't really thought about that. I've not done this in like a fine art framing, but I was like, well, can we price artworks based off of like the bling and the number of lens flares? And he was like, sure. He was like, yeah. He was like, I don't want to get totally back into this, but this sounds fun.
He's like, yeah, whatever you say, man.
Yeah, pretty much, right? It's like,
I'm gonna, sure, dude.
And I wanted to ask him, like, don't you get one of these offers every month? And he's like, not really. You're like the first person to contact me in a little while. He's like, occasionally. But I wonder if it's just technology catching up, because like back in the day, it was like memory was expensive, like computer memory, and like towers that could process these images were very expensive. And it was kind of like a more niche market. Now you can just probably do it on your phone. And I thought it was like he could have spent a lifetime doing it, but I constantly daydream and wonder how those like online ceramics guys feel, because they've been at it for a while, and everyone's like, do the online ceramics thing, and they're like, well, what about this thing? And they're like, no, we want like that weird turtle smoking a doobie with the words that are kind of neither here nor there. I like that company quite a bit, but like I wonder if they've hit the pen and pixel wall.
Is there? I'm wondering if there's like a basketball analog to that, right? Could you be like Jeremy Grant? I've been the 3-and-D guy for too long.
Literally.
I know I can do this for the rest of my career and make good money. But like, I kind of want to dribble. I think it'd be sick if I could dribble, just like whenever I wanted.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of fire.
Isn't that interesting that it happens like an inverse bell curve? Because as we've talked about in the draft, in 2022, you're really incentivized to be like, okay, you do two things well. In order to be a real prospect, you need to add a third, whatever. If you want to be number 1, 2, or 3, And I think every prospect would want to do that. And then when you get to the NBA, you're going for that contract. So you just want to like hammer down what you do. Whether that be scoring, score buckets, whether that be defense, like be the best defender. And then when you're out of it and kind of getting aged out of the NBA, you learn new skills to just try to stay in it, like Vince Carter, right? He stopped dunking and it's like turned into be an all-around kind of contributor on the court.
We actually talked about this in The Joy of Basketball with Vince Carter. And I always kind of wondered if his longevity was a response to those early critiques that he didn't care enough about the game, that he went to his college graduation and on the day before or earlier in the day before Game 7 against Philadelphia in 2001,
the logo,
and him being known as like Vince Carter and being soft and being injury prone, being booed in Toronto, going to New Jersey. And I wonder if he's like stuck it out, like, no, I'll show you I love this game. I'll prove it to you guys and myself by hanging around forever.
Yeah.
I mean, the most obvious take here is that he always loved the game and that those accusations were unfair and based on him, being hurt or not enjoying his work environment, etc. But that relationship between someone who was always questioned for his heart, saying, I'm just going to play out the string until I'm 78 years old, like as long as humanly possible, we're related.
Yeah. And I think it's just human nature. I'm trying to think of outliers, like Zion becoming Point Zion, which was like unlocked him. But like it happens early too, like Winslow, right? Like Justice Winslow was kind of, his weaknesses kind of showed faster than he would have hoped before he got to that big contract. So they started using him as a point guard, and I miss Point Winslow. That was kind of exciting. That didn't work out. I don't know if he's even in the league anymore. I think he's in Memphis. I don't know, but it happens in times of like in marker points, whether that be a draft, whether you're coming up on exiting the league or losing your spot. Like people are adaptable, and I don't know. This would support the simulation, but my frustration is when players kind of coast to get that contract because they can do more. And like I think of the players that we always discuss, like Booker, Mitchell, Tatum. They kind of do a thing really, really well, and they got paid. And I personally, in my own backyard, like in my own goth backyard, my food court, like RJ Barrett can do more than this, but I think he's looking at a contract, and I don't blame him. He's not Miles Bridges. He's not trying to be a basketball player and rapper. He's a rapper.
And have the coolest left hand that artificial intelligence can conjure.
Chillest left hand.
Just to tie up some loose ends here, Winslow related. He played 48 games last year, split between the Clippers and Portland, most of it being in Los Angeles.
Strange.
Didn't play a ton, but did until Portland. Played about 26 minutes a game, put up 11 points, 6 boards, a couple assists. So Winslow's still kicking around, and is only 25 years old.
He's only 25?
That's fucking shocking, man. Let me see. He's now 26. He turned 26 in March, but that's shocking. The other one that I tweeted out the other day is that it always is crazy to me, is that Derek Favors is 30.
Yo.
He's 1 year older than Gary Payton, too. More Gary Payton.
Right. Who's older than I thought? But like, yo, what's Millsap? Don't tell me Millsap's like 32 years old. Millsap has to be like 47.
I think he's like 35. All right, I got another one for you. This is a good one. Okay. How old is Jared Sullinger?
Sully? He was around for a while. Is he like 49 years old?
He's 30. He just turned 30 in March.
Wow. Well, respect. I mean, he looks great. Or maybe he doesn't. I don't know. I don't know what accolades.
Wait, are you talking about the pilot? I'm talking about the former. I'm talking about the former Celtic great.
Are you talking about Tom Hanks?
The guy who landed through the geese?
Well, did Sullinger play on the same NBA team as Big Baby at one point? That was a large. Those are two large lads. I think so. I mean,
it's just wild to me that he just turned 30.
Like it's so wild that means he was in the NBA like as recently as 5 years ago, right? 6.
Yeah, but he was on the same team that had Brandon Bass and Kevin Garnett and Jeff Green, Barbosa,
Kyle Lowry,
Darko. He played with Darko.
He was on a team with like a old timey wagon, like a car with a wagon on the back, a radio flyer wagon.
He was on the same team as the Soggy Bottom King. Paul Pierce.
I was like Kyle Lowry. Isn't it wild that a player like Sullinger would probably not get drafted in 2022 and probably not even make a team? Like that physicality, that body type is like no longer useful, right?
You're just.
Am I kink shaming? Am I being Pat Riley?
I was going to say, you're just Mike Sweeney baiting.
Knicks legend Mike Sweeney. At the time, we knew it was trouble because of his body. Okay, this is kind of dark. Would you trust somebody who was body positive or a rapper who makes AI-generated images and posts them online? Like, who would you pay? Is there a risk involved? If you were talking to, like, a risk assessment person on your team or, like, I don't like insurance, but this is how they think. Like, what poses more risk down the line? An artist or someone who enjoys garbage plates? Respect.
Hard to say, because if someone's success is inherently tied to their ability to jump extraordinarily high or run really fast, then an injury could curtail that and they would not be playable. But if you are a large lad and your skill set is more about whether it's physicality or guile or passing, maybe there's an advantage to that. And of course, I'm thinking about Jokic and guys like the bozo Grant Williams.
But those guys are different, right? Like Jokic gets a bad rap because he has no muscle definition. And like, okay, if we talk about the most body positive kings in the NBA who get kink shamed, it would be Jokic, Luka, Carmelo Anthony did, but he was wearing body armor.
The thing is, man, yeah, he was like wearing Teflon or something. He was like vested up.
Teflon. Kevlar?
Kevlar.
Non-stick, baby.
Teflon body armor.
Generate.
Yeah, bullets just glide off of me.
Yeah, maybe you're thinking of a Teflon Don.
Yeah, but I was gonna say, you go back and you look at the early 2000s when the tempo of the league was at its lowest point ever, and there was the least efficient scoring ever, and I think a lot of that was tied to personnel because teams tried to win by just clogging the paint with as many large bodies as possible.
Yeah.
And you couldn't even run pick and rolls back then because there weren't guys spaced out to the sides. So what was even the point? Maybe you could do a little weak side one, but people were still dumping into the post. You had the guys like AI and Kobe and Stackhouse basically charging into the lane and shooting 12-foot pull-ups on every possession. Yep. But back then, you had Oliver Millers and Eddie Currys and what was his name? Jerome James?
Knicks legend Jerome James? Get out of
here.
here.
I mean, those guys were body positive in a way that no one in the NBA is today. Like, you go back and you look at those photos, it's crazy. They were large lads.
Yeah. And I think it was like the NBA was susceptible to the idea of like a superhero team. Like everyone has their own different powers, right? And like I think back in the day people tried to, no pun intended, like round out their roster with like, we need a big enforcer, we need a small fast guy, we need a middle guy. Now in the NBA, as we've learned, just get like 5 dudes who are the best at what they do and figure it out later. Like the Celtics, Ben Shapiro would agree with me, are an example of that, right? Like they have their switchable 1 through 5. They don't bother with like we need a small guy running and wine point guard. We need this kind of prototype big large lad dude, even though they have a Time Lord. Like those guys, they just accumulated a lot of very good players, and the mentality you're touching on, I think, was like, well, we need Jerome James because we don't have like the biggest dude we can find.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about the older coaches like Phil Jackson or Doc Rivers, they seem to have at least roots in that idea that you need to have a guy with a big soggy bottom in the middle of the paint. Like it's just inconceivable to run an offense or a defense, just to run an NBA system that doesn't have a enormous dude in the middle who can gobble up rebounds and clog up space. And I think early 2000s wise, I think part of the popularity of it was when they got rid of the illegal defense rule too, because that meant that you could kind of keep your big guy around the paint.
Yeah, exactly.
He didn't have to be, moved anywhere. And this was before teams had enough spacing and enough shooters to start, creating those matchups that we saw, kind of the rise of Curry and these high-scoring combo guards, where you'd run a pick and roll and those guys just couldn't stay on the court. Yep. And they died really fast. That generation, I think, kind of ended with Jahlil Okafor in many ways, where he was seen as, a throwback to sort of plodding bigs who had great post moves. And, if you go back and you watch Jahlil Okafor's post moves, they're fucking great.
Yeah, he's a good
They're
player.
filthy.
Yeah.
Just seeing the stuff he was doing with his spins, and he was really, really talented at a skill set that would be even valuable today. They just couldn't keep him on the court defensively, though.
Yeah.
You know, we talk about post game being, you know, one of the fabled lost arts, but like being able to just eat a defender alive on the post is valuable. It does come with downsides, though. If you can't space the court, or you know you can't, you know, get out of the lane, it just ends up with you calling for the ball a lot. But that said, man, Okafor was really good at one thing, and he deserves credit for it. The other stuff, not so much. But man, he was a beautiful post player.
I still remember hanging out with a Knicks scout before that draft, and he was just like, every day our staff prays for Okafor, man. We need those ping pong balls. And what you're talking about was already discussed on every like chat or whatever. It was on every blog. It's like, this guy might not translate as well as you guys think he might. You know, he's a tall guy from Duke. We get it, but like maybe stay away in the lottery from him because he won't have a long career. And the Knicks guy was just like, Okafor bust, man. Like, he's the one. And I just showed him on my phone all this talk back. He was like, wait, what are these blogs? I'm like, oh fuck, we're so fucked. We're never gonna have a great team.
I really do wonder, and for all the Sixers insight that we were able to glean from the burner accounts, I don't think we ever really got the story or the full story of why Sam Hinkie took Okafor.
Yeah.
I think those burner accounts said like that mistake was his. That wasn't ownership forcing him to make that pick, and I think that's probably true.
Yeah.
I don't think ownership would force a GM to take a player, especially unless it was Zion, you know, a guy who you're like, all right, this dude is the one, we have to take him. So I really do wonder if a trade fell through, that there was a plan to extort him and deal him elsewhere or something like that. It was just an odd move considering that they had taken Nerlens and they had taken Embiid, and to say, okay, we're going to take a third center who didn't fit the qualities that Nerlens and Joe had that seemed to calibrate with Sam Hinkie's worldview. I don't know if we'll ever know.
I always
great mysteries.
I always assumed, even before we were privy to this bounty of information, but I always assumed it was Hinkie sensing that the keys were going to be taken away from him, so he was trying to give management what they wanted in order to like buy more time to complete his project. And that's the problem with like job security. If someone has ultimate job security, they can make decisions that are truly inspired, but if they're looking over their shoulder, they're constantly trying to preserve their situation. So it's never good to be looking over your shoulder as a GM.
My hunch is that you are exactly correct. That is 100% what I believe, that he made that decision because it had less risk than taking Porzingis. Yeah. That he probably wanted D'Lo because that would just make more sense as far as roster goes. Yeah. But he couldn't pull the trigger on Porzingis when he knew that like he had a very short leash.
Yeah, and Okafor was kind of known as someone who would instantly help a team. Like, he was offensively NBA ready.
Roll out of bed and get a 2010. That was kind of the cliche that was used about him at the time. And
not to Hinkie's credit, Porzingis was very controversial. I loved him, but like he was a project. He was known as a project. And then the consensus five after him, we're talking about Hazonia, Cauley-Stein, Moody, Stanley Johnson, and Kaminsky. Like, just take Okafor then. You know, like these guys. Obviously, down the line you get Miles Turner, Devin Booker, but they were never in consideration at number 3.
No. It's also crazy that we talk about Okafor representing a different era. He's been out of the league for a little bit. The guy's 26 years old. He's a kid.
Is he in the NBA? Is he still in America? Or is he with Beasley in Shanghai?
He did not play in the NBA last year in the 2022 season.
He plays for the...
I don't know where he is now. Maybe
he
in
plays
China.
in the CBA, the Lions of the CBA.
It's crazy, man. 26. Like, barely old enough to drink at the hotel bar.
Also, he's not very likable. Remember there was that footage of him kind of like getting into kerfuffle out on the street that went
That
along.
was the most likable thing he ever did. He beat up Celtics fans.
Yo, me and you are in agreement here, especially like after Miles Turner outs himself as an artist. Like, this is me as a image maker for a living. Like, I love what he did, but it might get some bonobos.
Computer, generate my hand doing the coolest possible thing. Now here it is, punching a drunken Celtics fan.
Okafor punching Ben Shapiro. Enter. Yeah, I don't
So
know.
it sounds like we've arrived at the Celtics. By the way,
Oh. The finals, baby.
the Celtics in the finals by virtue of a stolen Strus 3. But here we are.
It is exactly what we thought. I mean, I think these finals are super fun. It is exactly what we've been talking about on this podcast with these perfect pods for years. Tatum has not changed.
It's
Brown has
crazy
not
how
changed.
right we are. So consistently.
We love Time Lord always. We love Smart, but like Tatum, I know he's an All NBA first teamer. But you know, like some Devin Booker is also an All NBA first teamer. Andrew Wiggins started the All-Star game. It is, all these things are true in data points, and they have to be considered. Tatum turns the ball over a ton. I think he's averaging more than 4 turnovers a game in the playoffs. He might beat the record for most total turnovers in a playoff run, in a single playoff run in NBA history. He goes cold 1 out of 3 games, but he's good. You pair him up with Jaylen Brown, who cannot dribble anymore, but together they're formidable. It's hard to talk about these finals because like each game is its own story, and each game kind of has its own ending. So it's difficult to predict the next game because I don't think Draymond Green's going to go off like he did. That was crazy what he did in game 2.
Well, just talking about the Tatum and Brown combo, as we've sort of said all year, the Celtics, and even when the Celtics went from being a mediocre sub-500 team to surging and winning tons and tons of games, and manipulating the voting into cascading the franchise with glittery hardware,
Named after
form of
Celtics.
award season, award season. But we do see the limits of guys who aren't natural creators, and I want to give Tatum credit for getting better at that. We've seen him improve at making reads that are expected of a primary ball handler in 2022. The diagonal pass to the shooter on the corner, hitting a guy cutting backdoor. When you get attention from defenses, there are certain passes that become available, and he's gotten a lot better at recognizing those. Mm-hmm. And I think he's even improved at kind of arrhythmic passing. And we've talked about that before. Sure. That the NBA and just basketball in general has this natural rhythm that goes to it. And, players who are better passers can kind of dodge and weave beyond that regular rhythm where normie players can't. When you're passing the ball to someone who's spotted up, if you do it on beat, the defender is kind of always going to get there at the exact same time as the ball. Mm-hmm. Because when you're playing off-ball defense, you're calibrating, how can I get back in a controlled closeout to this shooter while also, having my foot at the nail or while watching, the ball handler on the other side of the court or whatever. And I think Tatum has gotten better at making those quick reads where you just get rid of the ball swiftly and it gets there and it kind of takes the defense a second to react and you can get an open look off of it. So in game 1, I think he had 13 assists. But still, I think we're pushing the limits of what.
Did he shoot like 3 for 17?
Yeah, he shot really poorly. I'm saying I think we're seeing the limits of trying to create a playmaker out of a guy who isn't a natural one, and that's where the turnovers are coming in. I think, great playmakers turn the ball over a lot, but the Celtics are also giving Tatum a lot of responsibility as both a scorer and a playmaker, which isn't really what he is. He's a scorer who does some playmaking. So I think the turnovers are just kind of a consequence of overextending a good player and giving him a lot of responsibility that isn't naturally what he does.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to talk about Tatum too much, but it's cool that he's playing Klay Thompson because I think they're kind of the same player, right? Like, to me, there's two transcendental players in the finals, and it's Draymond Green and Steph Curry. I know this pushback with Draymond, but like, if you just are like kind of nerdy and look at what he's just incredible. What he does is just like really extraordinary. He's an outlier defender, and everyone else is just really good. And I think Tatum and Klay to me are the same type of player, like bucket getters for sure. Can go cold, but like in general, very reliable. Tatum's probably bigger and does a better job defensively at this point in his career.
I mean, I think Tatum is definitely more talented as an ISO scorer than Klay was. You know, so much of
fair.
Klay is just being an incredible knockdown shooter. But if we're talking about sort of dimensionality, if that's even a word, like
Right.
I kind of know what you're saying. I mean, I think, to be honest, Tatum's like a better version of Wiggins.
I like Wiggins more than. Oh, well, Wiggins is a different player. Wiggins has turned into kind of a Swiss Army knife. It's unfair in the finals because it's the Steph show so far through 2 games, right? I don't think Wiggins should be taking that many shots.
No, me neither. I don't think Wiggins is on the same level as Tatum at all. I mostly mean like as kind of a prototype. You know,
Yeah, fair enough.
ISO scorer, you know, solid two-way player. Tatum's just a better version of him.
Yeah, and man, I think we will see the best Tatum when he has like a player better than him on the court with him. I think and that could take. I was joking on Twitter. I'm like the 4 best Celtics, Time Lord, Smart, and the 2 Jays. Depending on your basketball worldview, you can rank them in any order from 1 to 4, depending on what you value. I don't think the Celtics get this far without Tatum, but I also don't think they get this far without Smart.
Yeah, in some ways he is kind of the ultimate role player in their system. That
Yeah.
they don't have a lot of guys who can create, and that's kind of what I'm getting to. Is like he's best as just a guy who goes and gets some buckets, and they have to use him against good defenses as also a creator. And I think that's when you end up with 122 assists in the postseason, which is excellent. Like he's getting a bunch of assists, but he also has 83 turnovers. And when you say our primary go-to guy for both scoring and passing, is there with a 4-to-3 assist to turnover ratio, you're going to have some offensive issues. But I come down to what you were saying, and I'm with that. I think the 2 absolute, incredible players in this series are Dre and Curry, and I think Tatum is good and Brown is good, and they have a really deep team with a bunch of talent, and I could see the Celtics winning this, but it's a different. It's a different style of team and the way that they're constructed.
Me and Ben Shapiro's prediction of Celtics in 4 did not come true, but maybe it could be the gentleman's Shapiro, where it's a 4-1 win. But I think I'm seeing it on like my Twitter feed, and I think a lot of these takes exist on there, as they do. I see the BMM kind of being like, whoa, Tatum is like, his stats are like not pristine. And I see a lot of that being like, wait a second, hold on. Is a first team NBA player in the finals like supposed to have this many turnovers? Why did he shoot 3 for 17? We've been talking about this for years, right? Like until he stops shooting 3 for 17 or committing over 4 turnovers, we can't really call him a superstar. So that's why it was so funny that he made the first team over someone like LeBron James or Joel Embiid. We're like,
Kevin Durant.
Or Kevin Durant, right? And I'm not even trying to be prickly about this. He just averages 4 turnovers a game. So that, and then the other teams always score points off of those turnovers. And I kind of want to shift to the Warriors a little bit. Man, I know it's some tech bro stuff, and I know like it's no fun rooting for the gold and blue, but like, damn, I love watching Steph Curry and Draymond Green play.
Yeah, I really I dislike this series as much as I thought I would.
You're not alone.
I turn it on like, this fucking sucks. I'm receiving no joy whatsoever. I think these guys are,
No joy of basketball.
I like watching these players play. I think they're good, but I'm just like, this sucks. I'm rooting for Golden State. What a foul existence this is.
But Draymond Green, come on, man! Like, how
I
can
love
you root
Dre.
against that guy?
Curry's great. Jordan Poole's fun to watch. I got no issues. I got no issues with the players even. It's just, at this point, I feel like all of my grievances are with the idea of a team or their fan base or ownership. There aren't really even any players that I don't actively dislike.
I actually like Tatum. I just don't like leprechauns as much. If I had to choose a villain,
Yeah, same. I mean, we only talk about Tatum because he's been.
Hello?
What the hell? Hold on, sorry. All right. Sorry, folks. There was a jangling outside, and I was like, "Is that someone in my apartment?"
Is the
smashing
leprechaun's belt buckle on his hat jingling?
I thought I'd said too much. The little shoe buckles jangling across the hardwood.
Like, I love Kevin Garnett. Paul Pierce. I think is hilarious. Like, Ray Allen is awesome. It's, of course, Knicks fans are not that fun, but leprechauns, like, they are shaping the Lakers and Leprechaun fan bases are of note.
They are, Andrew. The other day there was the Draymond technical thing. People were like really upset about this. That like Dre was playing fast and loose.
Yeah, he was.
And he already had a tech, and he was sure that he would not get another technical because he already had one, and they wouldn't want to eject him. And I saw this tweet that one guy had put up. Oh, now I can't even see it. The guy, you're unable to view this tweet because the account limits who can view it. Maybe he blocked me for disagreeing with him, but I didn't even write on him. Maybe he went private. Wow. Anyway, dude put up a tweet that said that like the league was saying the quiet thing out loud, that they were like acknowledging that the second technical might require a more severe offense than the first one. I'm like, no shit.
Yeah, no shit.
What do you think? What do you think this is?
Right.
Like, it's not the same as like whether a basket counts for 2 points or 3. Mm-hmm. Like, this is all arbitrary. It's completely arbitrary. It's what the refs want to do. It's what they feel like the game needs. The technicals aren't in there as like this like justice system. They're in there to keep the game under control and prevent guys from, disrespecting the refs or each other, and just keeping the game going smoothly. They're not there as like a code of conduct.
Right.
I guess there is a code of conduct, but not like they don't have to be enforced. Who cares?
Yeah, I don't think there is like a moral code to this kind of entertainment. And every time someone brings up the fact that like, this is just like Bill Burr on a late night talk show was just like, this is how every NBA game goes. By halftime, the refs, and by the end, the refs. I'm like, I don't know. Maybe sometimes, but not really, because do you even watch the games, bro? Whatever. But I think the NBA takes a form of entertainment where they shape things. There's mascots. It's for kids. Of course they want close games. Of course they want the Celtics and Warriors to go 7. But, I think as a community, as a world community, no one really likes cops. And, like, refs are cops. Like, and they're in an impossible position of their choosing. And they are tasked with handing out, like, game punishments, but also moralistic punishments. Like, you can't complain a call or else you get a tech. If you complain too much, you get kicked out. I'm like, what the hell? Like, you should not have that power, first of all, The
irony of the guy who tweeted that, Ben DeBose, who's a sports writer, going private.
Wait, I have his tweet here. Steve
Yeah, people
Javy, the
said-
NBA's officiating analyst, is openly suggesting on the league's official broadcast that the standard for a technical is different when a player already has a technical. This is a remarkable example of saying the quiet part out loud.
Well, it appears he's been silenced. Javy got to him.
I mean, like after all the things we know about what the refs do and the way they gamble and the the phone conversations they have, Donahue went to jail for it, and to think that he was a lone wolf is funny. We talked about this last pod, whatever. Directions from the head office themselves, but like, if Dre does get kicked out, we get an equal and opposite reaction of being like, well, the refs have too much power. You can't kick out the second best player in the series for like something he shouldn't have done, but like, we're watching a game. Like, we want the best possible players on the court, so keep them on the court.
I mean, that's the job.
Yeah. To protect the players, right?
Well, it's the finals. The worst possible situation is that the refs come in and say, hey, that's too much roughhousing, Draymond. You're out of here. Mm-hmm. And that affects the game. Mm-hmm. You don't want that. I mean, I understand Celtics fans saying, we want that advantage. We want Draymond out of the game because he misbehaved out there and was shoving people around. But, like, is that the sport we want? And, like, look, I do think Dre is going to have to be careful. Because
for sure.
There's been a big stink made about it. And at some point the league's like, hey, dudes, you actually can't let Dre take those kind of liberties.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, I know you don't want to reject him. We don't want him ejected. But if he's going to do it and talk about it and make it a thing, we don't want to be a thing.
Well,
And
it's like ultimate.
If that means ejecting him, we got to go back the other direction.
It's ultimate cop shit, right? Like, oh, you disrespected us publicly? You better watch your back. And it's just like, now that he said that after the game, he's right about it all. Like, of course, protect the best players on the court for entertainment purposes. I'm sure the refs got a call from Silver just being like, do not kick Draymond Green out of this game. Like, he is box office. People love to hate him,
Well,
and
also,
Silver's not alive. Oh, I'm sorry,
also,
I killed the wrong person.
But I'm saying he was also ejected from a game in that swayed a final series. And granted, it did it in an amazing way for LeBron's legacy in the league. But Golden State probably wins that series if Draymond doesn't get booted. Now, granted, that was different. He was waging a rampant war on men's balls throughout the entire playoffs and just wouldn't stop doing it. That was one of the more surreal sequences of events. He just kept hammering away at Steven Adams' nutsack.
It was like the Mike Tyson ear bite on Holyfield, or like, it was a very odd, or like Zidane's headbutt. But Draymond is older and wiser. Now he's part of the new media, as he keeps on reminding us, and I think he's one of the greatest NBA thinkers that we got. But like, I love it when his emotions bubble over. I think there's a stat, I don't know exactly, but the Celtics aren't really shooting in the paint that much. And I'm like, he's fucking annoying. He's going to get in your grill. It's just like, it's a ball of muscle coming at you screaming, And Draymond, people think about Draymond too much in these terms. I think that is a part of his game, and it's an effective part. Intimidation for him is a part of what makes him great. But the switching he does and the helping, there was one play where Wiggins stumbled and Dre closed out on Wiggins' guy and returned to guard his own guy. It was just like incredible to watch. I'm glad he's healthy. I'm glad all these players on both teams are healthy. Maybe Smart and Time Lord not so much, but like, I don't know, man. This is what I wanted from really the poorest matchup we could have imagined preseason.
I was not upset at all with the Celtics winning Game 1, even though I was rooting against them.
That was a
obviously,
fun game. Yeah, I like that.
Because it was also Al Horford. That was just funny.
Horford
just balling out of control.
Yeah.
Tormenting the Golden State Warriors at every turn. Blocking shots, getting rebounds, knocking down threes, making smart passes. It was just a Horford season. And so I couldn't be mad as someone who's defended him against the slander of Philadelphia nation.
Yeah.
But, Yeah, I think this has potential to be a fun series. That's the only joy I'm going to get out of it.
Yeah.
Maybe I can become more emotionally invested. I'm just a broken man at this point.
So I heard our homie Chris Gaomali talking. Someone asked him online, being like, he has a wonderful new child in addition to his family, and someone was like, "Are you watching the finals with your kid?" He's like, "No, I don't want to risk my kid becoming a Warriors or Celtics fan."
Facts.
Straight facts, man. Shout out to Chris.
So before we get out of here, we got to do a little Knicks for clicks.
Yep.
So some things that have happened recently are giving some context to the Knicks' upcoming offseason. They hired former Knick himself, Rick Brunson,
The Brunson
who's
burner.
the father of Jalen Brunson, a restricted free agent on the Mavericks. So hired by the Knicks, and has been long rumored to be a target for the Knicks organization, being that they never seem to be able to get a point guard that they like. And that's something that New York basketball heads fetishize, the New York point guard. And he would qualify as one.
Rick Brunson was a
sort of.
very popular player in New York. Even though he was a bench warmer, there was like chance for him to come into the game. So he is part of our history.
He is part of Knicks lore.
Yeah.
And then we had Quinn Snyder. I don't know if he went his separate ways. I don't know if he was fired. I don't know what they're
We won't know for a
phrasing
while.
his departure from Utah. Rumored to be a way to appease Donovan Mitchell. Whether or not that's true, I don't know. But Mitchell is currently doing an Adidas campaign at like Rucker Park in New York. Mm-hmm. He's also from New Jersey, I believe, or from Westchester or Long Island. He's from the tri-state area.
Father works for the Mets.
Right, so you got that. And then we've also got new faces, sort of Ayton now in the mix as a guy, or Levine, or Beal, or Miles Bridges, who has the coolest left hand in the business. How are you feeling about this, Knicks man?
Oh man. Okay, let's get rid of the cap. Let's just say fan fiction. We get straight royal flush. We get all of these players, right? It is an AI generated team, and we got Mitchell being the Spider-Man. We got Brunson being Brunson burner number 2. Ayton just dominating those defensive rebounds. Bridges being the chillest left hand in the game. Beal, buckets. We're still not getting very far in the playoffs, right? Like, all those players together don't spell a contender. They spell like a Bulls team with Levine still on it.
Well, I'm looking at this list. Okay, so you got Ayton at the 5, Bridges at the 4. All right, we got let's say Levine. Let's put
2.
Let's say Levine or Beal at the 2, 3.
Sure.
Mitchell
Wings,
at the
right.
2, Brunson at the 1. That's a good team. I don't know if they can defend a lick, but that's a pretty good team.
That's a good team. That's not as good as the Bucks. That's not as good as probably the Sixers with Harden. That's not as good as the Heat. That's probably not Celtics. Probably not as good as the Celtics. Not as good as Toronto. Like,
It's a lot of walking buckets.
but how many buckets can you got to score like 150 points a game to like maximize
Well, this is what I'm
that.
saying. I'm like, what does Ayton do well? I mean, he's become a good defender. He's obviously been a part of a great defense, but I don't know how much of it is attributable to him. Like, he's an okay defender, though.
None of these players are bad, for sure.
No. Like, Bridges, undersized, doesn't really defend. Levine and Beal,
I like
both
Levine
poor
the
defenders.
most.
Mitchell, very poor defender. Brunson, pretty good. That looks like a 52-win team.
I agree. And it is impossible because this is not an AI-generated world yet. But let's say the Knicks hit a home run and get Brunson and Ayton. Yo, man, we're not going to win that many more games. We're going to maybe sniff the playoffs.
All right. Brunson, Ayton. You got to trade for both of them or overpay them both. I wonder how that'll work out.
Dude,
like, can you keep Randall and RJ and then have Brunson and Ayton like in this dream sequence?
I don't think so.
Maybe if you could, like, that's a good team. They would win more games, in my opinion. Like, they were very low on the talent threshold last season.
Oh my God.
Adding Ayton and Brunson makes them better. But I'm with you. It doesn't make them a contender.
No, and it sends us to the number 14, 15, 16 in the draft. I
But both
wrote
those guys are young, to be fair. Like that is a key because it's difficult to find a good player in restricted free agency. Their team is not willing to, to match your max offer. But it also speaks to the kind of players they are too, because anyone who is an absolute superstar when they're going into their second contract, it's max automatically. You can offer whatever you want.
Yeah.
The other team is going to match it. It just doesn't. There's no point.
Yeah.
The original team can offer more money and a longer contract. To get someone to offer, a contract from an outside team, you're just going to get less money in less years. So the only advantage if you're an RFA, if you're a superstar, if you don't take that max extension, is to try to get out of there earlier. Mm-hmm. And most guys don't want to do that. They want to take the 4-year max deal as everyone should, or the 5-year max deal, because you need that money in the bank. You need that guaranteed contract. So it does speak to exactly where Ayton and Brunson are on the ladder of stardom, where they're both like good. They're good. But are they building blocks?
No, and you don't want to turn over into 2024 and have these guys they're going to be on the trading block immediately after next season. It's like the bright, shiny thing in the summer, even in the regular season, is the Knicks' Achilles heel. They were like, well, we need to win these last few games because your culture, baby. Or we need to get these available free agents because like that is the prize that people want right now. Obviously, the Knicks should invest in a top 5 pick every year until they find a good player. They should desperately do that, actually, and time goes fast. Like, the quality of players now, you'll probably see a return in a few years. Getting a Shaedon Sharpe is like no joke. It is no joke to get one of these players. And adding a Brunson is good for New York, but I think like Dallas is looking forward to offering him what he wants. I don't think that would be their smartest decision either, especially with Luka there. But these are just, I mean, they're good players, but the Knicks need extraordinary talent. They don't need respectability.
Yeah, I mean, after Chicago's success, granted they were derailed by injuries, I always try to think if there's different ways to skin the cat when it comes to building a team. Are you just resigned to saying, hey, we just have to get pieces for the draft? Like, is that it? Is that the only way we can possibly do this? I don't know. Maybe you can find guys that you can identify as being quasi-stars that you believe can actually become stars. Like, maybe you look at Brunson and you say, I think this guy can actually be like a multi-time all-star. We have to go get him.
I like Brunson.
I'm not saying that, but or Ayton. Like, no, this guy is going to be the face of the center position for 10 years. We got to go get this guy, and maybe you can get a contender that way. I feel like it's artificially limiting and almost too depressing to say we just have to do this through the draft in a way that puts you in competition with teams like OKC, who are like, hey, man, you want to go through the draft? We are too. We've got 20 first-round picks over the next 4 years. Like, good luck beating us at this. Yeah. Like, we're gonna get all the picks. We're gonna get all the players, and we're gonna try to win by the draft. But we're really going for it, while saying, all right, we're gonna sort of go for it. We're gonna kind of tank. We're gonna play some of these guys who are pretty decent, but we're gonna focus on the draft a bit too. I don't know.
That's how you get the 11th pick, right? And like, to your point, like OKC, I think is dominating. There can only be a few teams to dominate this point of view. They did not get the number 1 pick. The Magic did. The Rockets are right there. Like, many teams are doing. The Kings keep on blowing it, but they got number 4. And when I say the draft, like, that's like a hypothetical idea. But let's look at specifically what's happening this summer. If you want to give Ayton the max, he's going to want the max. At number 11, the Knicks are projected to get this guy, Jalen Duren, who's basically a cool DeAndre Ayton. He's a beast. He's like Marcus Camby, but twice as athletic. Like, Or if he doesn't fall, like you have Matherin right there, who is basically like Levine or like Jalen Brunson. And if those guys aren't there, there's a guy like Dyson Daniels who's like the point guard you kind of want. So if you just look at where the Knicks are, they should wait to see kind of how this all plays out, because also the IQ is there. And when you're a bad team, you never want to sign or draft for need. You want to get the best players possible. But like, what if you gave IQ the usage you would give Donovan Mitchell? And he's not going to be as good, but he's going to cost a fraction of that money. You can spend it somewhere else.
Oh, I agree with all that. I'm just saying, if the idea of rebuilding, like really rebuilding, yes, I get that, and that's OKC. That's what Orlando did. They traded off all of their players. Like, get them all out of here. Vooch, Gordon, Fournier, all the guys that we rebuilt with 5 years ago. Like, let's do a full sage. Let's cleanse this place. Okay, now this is Obama's house. Obama's house.
Mobamba.
Mobamba. But this is Mobamba's house. This is where Jalen Suggs lives here now, etc.
Right.
But they did that. They went scorched earth, get rid of everyone. And that's exactly what Houston did. They went from a contender to just sloughing off Harden and everyone else they could and amassing picks. So while that's true that, those guys are not as like deep in the rebuilding game as OKC, they are also doing full-scale rebuilds at this point. So I'm not opposed to the Knicks saying, let's get rid of everybody and start over.
Oh, they won't.
I'm mostly saying if you're not going to do that and you're not going to be a bottom three team, like, because you got to be bad to get in that mix with those Orlandos and OKCs and those teams that are really
Not
just
necessarily.
playing.
There's a lottery, right? I mean, it turned out the numbers played out, but the lottery kind of is more random than it seems to be, even with the flattened odds.
No doubt. I'm not arguing against the idea that you can get lucky in a given year, but I just think there is like an exponential. Like, you have to not only get lucky in the draft, but you also got to get lucky to get the guy that you want in that draft. So it's like, all right, the Knicks are the seventh worst team because they're clearly not on the same level of decrepitude as Orlando, Houston, OKC, Detroit, and even Indiana this year. Maybe they're on that level, but you got to basically get it twice. And these guys are just going so hard at rebuilding. I'm just saying maybe there is a pathway that is like, all right, we're going to get this DeRozan guy. We're going to get this Ayton guy. We're going to go out and we're going to get a Brundog, and he's going to lead us to the championship gold.
I mean,
I'm not suggesting it's these guys, but like, I can't say the draft is the only way to do this, because I don't think that's necessarily true.
it is the easiest way to do it, because
Yes, I mean, yeah, that's probably true.
like all you have to do is lose games and pick someone that one out of three guys in that zone. I mean, the Pistons, I think, like they tried to be good. They have Cade Cunningham, they have an expensive player in Jeremy Grant, and they fell 2 spots to number 5, right? And the Rockets fell 2 spots. The Kings went up 3 spots. Like, there's some chaos there that's worth getting into. Let's say the Knicks were the 7th worst team and got the 7th pick. We're no longer talking about like the Sohans or Durans or Johnny Davises. We're talking a tier up now. Jaden Ivey, Sharp, Murray, Griffith. Like, that changes everything. That's a completely tier up.
Of course, no, of course I understand this. I'm also just saying that, like, and I'm with you that the Knicks winning those late games with 40 by Obi Toppin and
didn't matter this year, but it's a not smart, right?
No, I'm with you in that. If you're going to be a team that's not good, I don't think you should be clawing out victories.
Yeah.
I'm also just saying that I think there is like an inherent amount of risk in saying,
oh yeah,
all right, if we're 7th worst team, we're gonna be, that's not a competitive squad, and like hopefully we move up in the draft, and then hopefully we get the guy that we wanted to. Like, there are also a lot of risks involved in that strategy if you're not doing it in the way that Orlando or OKC or Houston is, where you're just getting multiple cracks at it, like putting all your weight in like that one pick. You're like, ooh, we dropped 2 spots and now we're 9. It's like, fuck.
That's
Like,
okay though.
I
You
don't
got to
know.
try again, right? A year goes by so fast. Like, you just got to keep trying. And the Knicks had a number 4 with Porzingis and a number 3 with R.J. Barrett. Like, they kind of hit on Porzingis, and R.J. not to their fault. I think he was a consensus number 3, but like, you got to keep on going. It's better than getting Jalen Brunson every year for $25 million. And it
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like if you're,
You think
you
the
just
Knicks are
have to
better than
get-
I do, because
well,
I don't
no,
think
I
the
think
Knicks
they're
are good.
bad. I just think you have to get really lucky to get that guy on a given year, and to say, all right, we're going to try to do this for 5 years straight. It's tough. It's tough. I get why it's.
Is it tougher than being than this last Knicks season? Like, it wasn't that tough. I don't think being worse is that tough. I don't think it's hard to be a Thunder fan right now, for example.
No, I don't either. Look, I've rooted for the Sixers through the process. I'm mostly saying it's tough to justify that strategy if you aren't doing the other things, which are like, okay, amassing second-round draft picks, playing all these young guys, trying to develop talent, and doing the whole thing. Just to
The
say,
Knicks are doing those things.
I think they've done a good job with that stuff.
Yeah, their boss has expectations that I'm sure Leon Rose bristles against, but and they're waiting for the big fish, right? Like, I don't think these free agents this summer are the thing they want to spend their cap on necessarily. We're talking about the Knicks kind of because that picture of Randall came out where he's like fucking ripped, right? Like, he looks like he's been putting in work in the gym. The way we put in work at Soggy Bottom
On our and wine
bistro.
mixtape.
Yeah, and everyone looks at that picture and is like, "Wait a second, is Randall back?"
Is Randall brolic?
Yeah, and I'm
He's
like,
always been brolic, though.
yeah, he's always been brolic, and I think the jersey he wears. I like the silhouette of his jersey. I think he goes a size up a little bit, but Randall is a good player who had a tough season, who had an outlier season before that when he was all NBA. So the truth is kind of in between. He's not very expensive, and he will not give you a return in the market. I think the perception of him is that, so you will not get a bounty for him or a player as good as him. You will get hypothetical stuff like second round picks, maybe a washed veteran and a prospect that didn't work out. Things of those nature. So I don't think dealing him is smart right now. I'm a fan, obviously, but the Knicks don't have that many moves right now. I think they just have to draft and keep their good players.
All right, enough about this soggy bottom-ass franchise. Last question for the Knicks, then we're leaving. All right, out of this group that we've discussed, Mitchell, Brunson, Ayton, Levine, Beal, I want you to fill out this sentence. I would be shocked if the Knicks didn't blank.
I'd be shocked if the Knicks... that's a weird question. I'd be shocked if the Knicks did, you mean?
No, I'm saying didn't. I'll give you one. I would be shocked if the Knicks did not offer Brunson a max contract.
Max?
At
Shocked.
$25 million versus 28, fine. 25. I think the Knicks are absolutely going to offer him a contract.
Oh, a contract for sure. I think they're going to offer every one of those guys a path to New York. I just don't think it's going to be the ceiling of what they want. Like, I don't think the Knicks will unload everybody for Donovan Mitchell. But they're going to offer, for sure. Maybe the number 11, RJ, and Randall. I don't know, But, IQ, you hold on to, Obi. I think the trifecta of RJ, Obi, and IQ will not go together. I think bits and pieces might, but Knicks have not quite been doing that. They allegedly didn't really open up the pocketbooks for Kyrie and KD either. We don't know exactly what happened, but everyone claims they didn't offer them a deal in the end. So I'd be surprised if they did offer the ceiling for any one of these guys.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to say we're going to give you a zillion draft picks and all of our young talent, but I could maybe for Mitchell. He has at least a reputation as a superstar. I view him as like a solid, above average. He's a good scorer. He's a good scorer. Like
he's worth like
he's a good player.
I'm not into Officer Mitchell, but if objectively, it would probably take the number 11, maybe next year's pick, one or the other, and a young guy and a proven guy. So whoever the Jazz like more, I think it would probably have to be like Randall and R.J. Barrett.
I haven't looked at the Knicks cap situation, so they might be able to just absorb most of Mitchell's contract in while not picking
RJ's up for
some
a contract
extensions,
too, right?
stuff like that.
Right.
Well, anyway, it's sad that we had to finish a perfect pod on so much Knicks talk, but in order for it to be perfection, sometimes we have to do things that we don't enjoy.
See you at the Soggy Bottom Bistro.
Cookies.
I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.